Celebrated comic creator PEACH MOMOKO, the woman behind Demon Days and Star Wars Visions, offers us a brand new vision of the X-Men in a brand new Ultimate Universe. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Ultimate X-Men issue number 1 and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the book, we are not actually in Japan, but instead in the Eastern Territory. You'll remember if you read the prologue to this new Ultimate Universe, when the maker recreated this Earth to his liking, he more or less did away with countries and cut up the world into fiefdoms for his most loyal followers, many of whom actually happen to be mutants now that I stop and think about it. We're introduced to our main character, Hisako Ichiki. Today she's graduating from high school, but it's a rather complicated situation for her. You see, she's actually missed a ton of school due to a recent bout with depression. And as kids often are, the other students aren't very kind to her, saying, hey, don't get too close, maybe her condition is contagious. Hisako ends up receiving her diploma, but more interestingly, she's also given a boy second button. What does that mean? Well, I had no idea before reading the book, but apparently this is kind of a tradition in Japan, wherein at the end of the school year, boys will take the second button off their uniforms, aka the button closest to their heart, and give it to a girl they like as a show of affection. Which honestly sounds very cute, and I'm surprised I haven't heard of the practice until right now. Hisako is obviously surprised at this turn of events, but even more so that the button contains within it a small note telling her to come to a meeting behind the shrine after school. Now, Hisako's not dumb, and she thinks that this might be some sort of cruel prank being played on her by the other students, but her curiosity ends up getting the better of her, and she does indeed go to the meeting. It's after that everything takes a very dark turn. I normally don't do content warnings in these videos because I've never felt the need to before, but hey, if you have any personal triggers involving suicide, maybe you should skip to the end of this video. Don't say I didn't warn ya. You see, Hisako's not at the shrine for more than a few minutes when she ends up seeing a strange figure outside in the woods. After investigating it further, she ends up coming face to face with a horrifying dark entity made out of shadows. They don't actually give this character a name, but given its connection to X-Men lore, I am almost 100% certain that this guy is Shadow King, and I'm gonna call him that. Shadow King knows Hisako intimately, but moreover than that, he knows about her relationship with her former best friend. The two were apparently absolutely inseparable, doing everything together. In fact, they may very well have had romantic feelings for one another. Unfortunately, Hisako never got to figure out one way or another because poor Tsubasa was also brutally bullied by the other students at school, so much to the point that he ended up very tragically taking his own life. This, of course, ended up kicking off Hisako's own bout with depression, feeling that she was responsible and that she didn't do near enough to stop her friend from taking his own life. The Shadow King also gifts her a small charm, which, hey, look at that, features a tiny figure inside a much bigger suit of armor. We call that foreshadowing around these parts. Apparently this thing belonged to Tsubasa when he was alive. The Shadow King further salts the wound by playing into Hisako's worst ideas by essentially saying, yes, it was your fault your friend killed himself. You didn't do enough, and now you're going to be haunted by his ghostly visage. They don't actually say how Tsubasa killed himself, but seeing how he's shown on the page here, just hovering a few inches off the ground, I think it's pretty safe to assume that he hung himself. A terrified Hisako rides her bike as fast as she humanly can to try and escape this haunting, and in doing so, she ends up almost getting run over by a car. In fact, she would have been dead if her classic mutant powers from the 616 universe didn't end up activating. Yes, that's right, Hisako is actually armor, and you know what? Get all your JoJo's Bizarre Adventure jokes out of the way right now, because this is a very serious book with very serious topics, but yes, the armor powers in this new series definitely look like stand powers, I'm not gonna lie. Also, if this whole car crash story sounds familiar to you, it absolutely should, because in one of the prologue books to this series, we actually saw this mentioned in a little news crawl. Now, the next day when Hisako is finally able to pull herself together, we actually get a small glimpse of her home life. It seems that she lives with her single mother and grandmother, who I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume that they probably don't have the best relationship if Hisako's mother wasn't able to realize that her daughter was freaked the hell out, and that Hisako never thought to tell her mother about everything that's going on, what with the literal ghost hauntings and the activation of latent mutant powers. If nothing else, Hisako does prove to be rather resilient. She decides to get up that day and lay some flowers at where, again, I can only assume her friend ended his life. Once again, though, she ends up getting accosted by the Shadow King, who again really ends up cutting to her core with how much he actually seems to know about her. The implication, at least as I'm gleaming it, is that maybe Tsubasa actually actually is the Shadow King. The Shadow King again stresses that Hisako is responsible and that he hates how she's been living so easily ever since Tsubasa's death in a carapace or armor, if you will, and that he wants to snatch her out of it. It's only when the Shadow King goes to attack that mutant armor ends up activating once again to protect her. The armor, which very much seems to have a mind of its own in this story, actively defends Hisako and manages to briefly dispatch the Shadow King. However, he does leave some terrifying parting words saying that his curse is only just beginning, and that there's a whole world of people outside Hisako that it wishes to punish for Tsubasa's death. And as the comic comes to a close, Hisako ends up getting a frantic phone call saying that the school's coach, a man who, you guessed it, also took part in bullying Tsubasa before his death, was found hung this morning. And they are not at all shy about showing it to you as the comic comes to a close, too. And so that was Ultimate X-Men issue number 1, everybody, and oh man, this comic was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. All my expectations were bucked and in record time, too. And honestly, it's fitting. The old Ultimate Universe was never afraid to completely reinvent the wheel when it came to their superheroes, and especially when it came to the X-Men probably having the biggest, most sweeping change of that entire original line when they opted to decide, oh yeah, the mutants aren't born, they're actually government test tube babies. Personally, I never really jived with that series. But this though, this I can really get behind. It's called Ultimate X-Men, but it really is only zeroing in on the very personal story of one mutant, Armor no less, a fan favorite who never really seems to get the spotlight, but here does in a big bad way. It's got this whole Persona 4 Junji Ito, very particular Japanese flavor of horror that I am really not used to seeing in my American comic book, and yet the whole thing just kind of works. I was really not expecting a paranormal horror twist on X-Men and mutant powers, and yet the whole thing just kind of works. I also got to admit too, I actually knew very little about Peach Momoko's art. I assumed with a name like Peach, oh, she must do cutesy anime stuff, right? Yeah, I was wrong in a big bad way. And given that she's both writing and drawing this book, I think we're probably gonna end up seeing some of her best, most striking work to date, and personally, I can't wait. Overall, I would give this one a very well-deserved 8.5 out of 10. Man, the new Ultimate Universe is 3 for 3 right now. Kudos to them for giving us stuff we as fans have been wanting forever, stuff we've never seen before, and complete reinventions of the wheel like this one. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.